What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. I apologize. I tried to do this stream just a few minutes ago, had some issues, so decided to relocate to where the internet always works. Back to the wine cave. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the debate. It was a rather interesting night. Coming into this debate, Trump's down by 12 points or so nationally. We know this thing is going to come down to it's going to come down to swing states. She was the clear winner. No, I just named this video Harris won the debate because I know that's what the media wants me to say. we're going to talk about the debate. So first of all, I just want to say, for those of you who didn't catch the first part of this video, I watched this debate. I thought that she was terrible. I thought it was really interesting that we had talked about Harris coming in to be the mouthpiece of the campaign, and then within that first 30 days or so, she's barely answered any media questions, and it's pretty alarming that you have two candidates who don't really take questions. One candidate who seems to be getting force-fed questions from the media. Doesn't matter who you support. At the end of the day, you want to know who you're voting for. You know what I mean? Like, I know many of you guys are voting against somebody, and that's a position. You 100% have your right to vote for whoever you want. I would never tell you who to vote for. I could care less. I want people to be informed. I want you to make decisions based on what you want for your life. If you think this candidate is better for you, great. But what I don't want is, I don't like the idea of voting. Well, I'm not going to say that. I watched the debate. I thought that Harris was terrible. And I said the other day, I don't know why everyone is so concerned that, or is so sure that Harris is going to just destroy Pence, because she couldn't handle Tulsi Gabbard or anybody else on the debate stage when she was in the primary. So why did anyone think that she was going to do well? I mean, she didn't poll well until she became a VP nominee, really. She didn't really do well as far as voting in California. She was a poor contestant in the debates, and she just never really crossed over. So the idea that she was going to be the VP pick was pretty laughable. Obviously, she was picked for what she looks like, whatever. But first thing I thought was hilarious is that at one point she said that she was chosen by Biden because of their shared values. And I very clearly remember some pretty interesting attacks in those primary debates, coming up to the point of calling Joe Biden a racist. I mean, she walked up to the line. She didn't cross it, but she pretty much inferred that Joe Biden was a racist. Now she's VP. Everything's all good. Whatever. Neither here nor there. According to the CNN exit poll, they did, I don't know who, I think they polled like 650 or so people, fairly small sample, whatever. 59% said Harris won, 38% Pence thought Pence had the better night. Now, the interesting thing is that those numbers are pretty much corresponding to what people predicted them to be. And I think that's really just a reflection of your own bias coming into the event. You had already made your decision as to who you were going to vote for, so that's what you were looking for. And yeah, there was definitely a part of me who, as an undecided voter still, I was expecting Harris to not impress me, but I was actually surprised by how bad she did, because she's not really had to answer any tough questions at all. So I figured after the primary, she learned some lessons. She's had a bunch of time to reverse. I wasn't really expecting Pence to be as prepared, as measured, as poised as he was. He had some really good responses. Definitely some of the truth, some what do you call it? Some they've manipulated some statements on both sides, but I thought he did pretty good until he took the lead of the president when he was asked that question about Breonna Taylor, and he somehow segued that into this whole law and order debate rather than simply answering the question. President Trump has obviously set a really bad precedence as far as not simply just distancing himself from the certain extremist groups or groups that are perceived to have an extremist lean. And I think simply saying, "Oh, I denounce this group," or I'm distancing, that's easy. Like, that's the easiest thing that you do as a politician, whether or not you believe it. You say it publicly, and you can do whatever you want privately, but at least keep up the illusion. Trump, for some reason, just can't do that. Like, he can't give you the satisfaction of knowing of lying to you. So he's just gonna dance around it. Pence, I thought, had a pretty decent night until that moment, and then I think it all fell apart. But ultimately, for the most part, I thought his night was actually better. There is this whole thing where the media is talking about this fly on Pence's head, which is just like, I was live tweeting the debate, and I was pretty much going response for response. But what started to irritate me is that I would look through other Twitter responders, and I was noticing this weird thing where people were talking about, "Oh, she's got that look on her face. You know what that means? Every black man has ever seen that face knows that she's about to give it to him." And I'm like, what? This is what y'all are here for? Flies on the head and who's got more sass? That's what works. This is why the parties don't respect your vote. This is why they look at you and they say, "Oh yeah, those people will definitely vote for us. We're definitely not giving them anything." We'll play Despacito and we'll do a little dance. We'll tell them that Tupac's our favorite rapper, and then we'll get out there when we're actually in office and completely ignore this group of people. Like, y'all got to start taking this stuff seriously. Not you, but I'm just saying, people in general. You want to vote Trump out? Fine. I don't think you should make it as easy as we're making it, because I think that politically, all we really have is the little bit of leverage that we have during an election year when votes are on the line. After this goes and everyone goes back to regular life and being busy and focused on everything else, because, we do have this pandemic thing, which is causing a lot of people to have a lot more free time than usual. You're not going to be paying attention probably nearly as much as you are in this moment. And I think now is the time to really put pressure on politicians to make sure that going forward they're looking to do some things that are actually going to benefit you, or they're at least they're doing the will of the people. And I just see far too many people making it easy for candidates who haven't really earned it on either side, really. Even that moment where Harris gets up and she says, "You guys have lost your right to run for re-election," or you lost your right to be president, whatever, something. And I was just like, yeah, but you haven't earned it either. Like, if anything, Pence's response were decent. Like I said, she wasn't able to fact check him on the spot. So, he had that I thought, really good response about the swine flu thing, how if it had been as deadly as what we're dealing with now, with 60 million Americans having it, there would have been a far greater, more Americans would have lost their lives, but they were fortunate. He cited some guy who worked in the Obama administration. That gentleman has actually come out and said that statement was actually misconstrued. But Pence was clearly prepared, right? He brought in responses that you typically don't hear from the president, that you don't even hear from the right-wing media. I was like, whoa, this dude's been studying. And unfortunately, Harris was not. She did as bad as Joe Biden. Like, literally, she did as bad as Joe Biden. Joe Biden was getting cut off. She wasn't really getting cut off nearly as much as it's presented. And I'm about to play this clip for you guys real quick, because it's going to tell you about, the basic summary of the debate as far as the minutes. I completely forgot about the VP debates and only read some online, only saw the Pence fly pick. Yeah, that's all you're going to see, because they don't want you to talk about the actual substance of the debate. Now, again, I always say the debates are a slam dunk contest. This is not about finesse. This is about excitement. This is about zingers. And they don't have a lot of Harris zingers. So they're running with this fly thing because it's way easier to talk about. If you watch that thing, if Pence was running for president, he could win. Like, if Trump would surround himself with people like Mike Pence, who he would let speak and shut up and stop saying ridiculous things, he would be doing a lot better in this election. Unfortunately, his narcissism puts him in the front of the conversation often, and it makes him susceptible to say dumb things, and he says them, and the media runs with it. Again, other than that one moment though, where the Breonna Taylor thing came up, Pence blew it. And I'm actually surprised they're not saying more about that, because I thought that was that was a glaring weakness in everything that he said. But for the most part, I thought Pence actually did pretty well. Should you watch the debate? You shouldn't watch the debate unless you're going to be reading the fact check as it happened, because there were a lot of fabrication. I don't say fabrications. There were a lot of misconstrued statements, but they were new statements, which was refreshing. So that's why I'm saying, if you watch that debate and you thought that Harris won, that's just because you want Harris to win. That's not because you actually thought that her responses were better or her presentation was good. Her presentation was not good. She gave you some nice moments that made you feel like, oh, she's a fighter and she's sassy, and she said, hey, don't interrupt me, blah, blah, blah. And then the moderator kept saying, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. That was trending for a while. And I think she was doing that to play up the narrative of these people interrupting the other side. I'm sure Pence did seem like at moments he was talking a little long, but Harris wasn't trying to get in a lot of those times. It's not like Harris was having something to say and he was just cutting her off over and over and over again. No. She was just sitting back. She would do what Joe Biden does when he starts to realize he's got nothing else to say, where he says, oh, I'm giving up my time, or I'm over my time, and he'll stop. She did a lot of things that made you think she's out of talking points, which is, again, really pathetic, because she hasn't had to answer any real questions. And they didn't even really talk about, issues that we didn't expect them to talk about. They talked about climate change a bit. They talked about, actually talked about foreign policy a bit, which was kind of surprising. A little bit of race stuff at the end. They didn't really talk about, and of course the pandemic. They didn't really pull any, whoa, where did that come from out of left field in this debate? So she should have had way better responses. 1 second. I'm going to play. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, you guys don't know what I did. She did worse than I hoped. She was trash, man. She did worse than Biden. Biden got a saving grace because Trump was interrupting him. She didn't have that luxury. So like I said, they presented it as though she was being interrupted just over and over and over again. But you're going to see in this clip that that's not quite the case. But let's play this. This is just a little summary.
Traditional news outlets knowingly report false or misleading stories, Steve. And this found that 92% of Republicans, quote, say that traditional news outlets knowingly report false or misleading stories at least sometimes. You say, okay, of course the right's going to complain about the media. Well, 79% of independents and even a majority of Democrats agree with that sentiment. I also heard last night, by the way, Steve, that Mike Pence interrupted so much. We have the final tally in terms of speaking time. Mike Pence, 35 minutes, 22 seconds. Kamala Harris, 38 minutes, 48 seconds, so she nearly got 4 more minutes of speaking time. To Kelsey's point, no questions about packing the courts until Mike Pence actually had to raise it. No questions on Antifa. No questions on abolishing the filibuster. No question on Kamala Harris raising money for a bail fund that helped free domestic abusers, including one man accused of sexually assaulting an 8-year-old. So the bias of omission was on full display last night in terms of the questions, in terms of the framing, and it even got to the point, Steve, that Chinese state media censored Mike Pence, took him off the screen during one segment of the debate, and then when Kamala Harris started speaking again, he came back on. So it doesn't happen here, it happens in China as well. There you go.
Dozy Boy says you got to consider that she could possibly be your president if Biden goes down with him, down in his term. Yeah, like I said, I thought that she would have been better. I didn't think she was ever going to be good. I thought it was funny that people were like, "Oh yeah, she's a beast." I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Did you see her in the primary? She was trash in the primary. She literally had one or two moments. She was awful. Elizabeth Warren should have been VP. Period. I don't care what nobody says. That would have been your pick. She's a woman. She don't have a woman of color thing, but she has way less baggage than Harris does. I thought she was a way stronger candidate, but they went with the, let's give people something to look at instead of actual substance, and they're suffering for it. She was supposed to step out front and speak for Joe Biden while he was in the bunker, and they hid her. They hid her for the last 35, 40 days. And she gets up on this stage last night and she has nothing new to offer. Like she was bad. It was really unimpressive. You know what I mean? Like she wanted to do what she does on the radio shows. She wanted to do what she does, in those little in the live streams where she makes little jokes and deflects completely. It's like, no, you're on the debate stage now. Like there's a guy over here who's trying to win re-election and you're not helping out your team right now. Didn't you see what your candidate just did last week? You would think that you would show up a little bit more prepared. Mike Pence looked good. Again, that Breonna Taylor thing, y'all got to stop with that. I mean, just Republicans in general. I don't know if anyone else is even following the league with that, but when someone brings up this race thing and then you follow that up with law and order and riots in the street, that does not come off good. It comes off like I've made my decision. This is who I'm rolling with, and to hell with everybody else. And that does not help you win votes. Now, I understand you don't really care about those votes, but I think that just like how if I were running the Biden campaign, I would ignore African Americans because 9 out of 10 African Americans vote Democrats, and I would ignore the progressives because they don't really have a choice. I'm going to ignore the extreme part of the right too. I don't care if the white nationalists or whatever extreme right group doesn't like every single thing I say, or if I have to denounce them. They're still going to vote for me because they don't want to vote for the other people. And I don't know why they get in situations like this where they get nervous and they buckle, and rather than just say the normal civil thing of no, I denounce that group, they just can't do it because that 4% fringe group is going to be upset. Y'all will be okay. I promise you. You preferred Klobuchar. Man, Klobuchar would have been. Literally, I had that thought last night. I literally thought last night Klobuchar would be crushing tonight. But listen, I'm not going to take nothing away from Mike Pence. I joked last week that I thought that he was a silent killer. I was really surprised by how well he did. I mean, hell, he looked like he definitely helped Trump out last night, because you're thinking Trump is a madman. Trump is unhinged. Trump is unpredictable. He's dangerous. And then Mike Pence gets up there and you're like, these guys work together? Like, they look like they work for two different companies. They look like they would never hang out. They would have no affiliation whatsoever. And, like I said, he was definitely stretching some truths in there, but he did it in a way that just seemed like he seemed confident. Someone compared it. They said it was something like a kindergarten teacher versus a radio show host or something like that. He was smooth. I did not know Mike Pence was that smooth. But again, they're focusing on the fly because they definitely don't want to talk about that debate. Pence has the veneer of a respectable person. Tulsi would have won for real. Because Tulsi will go for it. Tulsi's not afraid of what people are going to say. And that's what I think a lot of politicians lack. They're afraid of just standing by their with their beliefs, their convictions, and they're worried about re-election. And once you start worrying about re-election, you become useless because you're no longer willing to do you're willing to say whatever you have to say to win, and all you really care about is power. So you're pretty much worthless, which is why we do need term limits. Term limits are essential. We can't have people be politicians for life. That just shouldn't exist. If you're going to do civil service, then you do it for a time and then you give that time to somebody else. This is not some place where you should go and make a career. The only thing is that Klob is not POC. Well, that's why Biden's an idiot, right? Don't go for POC. A woman is enough. Like, for real. A woman is enough. I don't know why they had to get, again, if you're going to find a black woman, don't get her. You could have found somebody else. Harris? Nah. You could have found some school teacher who doesn't have a lot of political experience, like how they tried to run Sarah Palin or something like that. You go find a Sarah Palin. Don't go with Harris. But again, things are looking good for him. They're going to be skating by. And honestly, this is just a failure of the Trump campaign, and then the series of events that keep happening, with him now being down. And I just saw this morning that he said he's not going to do a virtual town hall or a virtual debate. He wants it to be in person, and Biden says that he's not going to, that if Trump is still sick, then he's not willing to actually have an in-person debate. Biden isn't a racist, but yeah, man, that's something. If Pence had just brought up half the stuff that has been brought up about Harris, or because that moment where Harris says, "Oh, well, or Biden chose me as his VP because of our shared values," I'm like, you mean like when you called him a racist a couple of months ago? Are you for real? Those are your shared values? Come on, man. Oh yeah, Tulsi definitely would have slam dunk, because Tulsi polled well with Republicans. She's anti-war. She's halfway. She's half Republican already. So yeah, she definitely would have been a nice piece to add to the ticket. But again, I'm just surprised how poorly Harris did, how poorly she's been as an asset to the campaign, and the fact that they're really about to run this entire campaign as anti-Trump, return to normalcy. We're not going to talk about policy, even though Biden actually has policies on his page. They just ignore them. And all they do is defend against Trump and Pence bringing up, how they feel about the Green New Deal, or, rolling back Trump's tax cuts, or tariffs on China, or, getting into the Paris Accord, or the Iran nuclear deal. Like, that's all they do. That's all they do. They just defend themselves. They only play defense. And because they're going against two equally bad candidates, apparently it looks like it's going to work. But, the real issue we have here, of course, is that whole piece of conceding the election, because that came up last night. Are you going to have a peaceful transfer of power? And even Pence didn't answer that question. Pence did not answer that question. Pence danced around it the way Trump did. And that's why they're losing. You know what I mean? They say stuff like that, and it's just like, rational people are thinking, okay, yes, the media is against you. Yes, things aren't looking good. Yes, there's a lot of, when you say stuff like that, people feel just as unsafe as they do with the people in the street with the tiki torches, or people who are rioting. Like, all of those things make people feel uncomfortable. I'm not surprised if Harris did poorly. She never brings anything much to the table. I mean, she didn't even have any. She had way less canned responses than you would have expected. You would have expected her to have like 15, 20 canned responses. She didn't even have that many. She probably had 6, 7. And Pence had brand new statements that you never heard before. And that made her nervous. And like I said, it was presented as though that Pence was cutting her off. But that's not really what was happening. He cut her off a couple of times, sure. But most of the time, when he was over his time, Harris didn't have anything to add to the conversation. She was just sitting there, nodding her head, making snarky faces and all of that. But she didn't want to talk. She didn't want to talk. She brought a script. I was literally, is she going to try to bring the little girl into this debate tonight? Is she going to talk about that? I was that little girl, because I don't know where it's going to fit, but I really feel like she wanted to pull that out there somewhere, and they're like, yo, that does not work for this forum. Harris told us that, so I didn't know it was double airborne. Clearly, Harris was told, we're ahead, just don't rock the boat and give them anything extra. And yeah, I agree. Personally, I think her lackluster performance is something to attack. I just thought Pence could have gone even harder. You know what I mean? Pence didn't really attack her record. He really didn't attack the Biden policies as much as he could have. But again, the media, there's one poll that I see. There's one poll. It's CNN. And it says 6 out of 10 people says Harris won. But most people wanted her to win. So that just matches their own personal bias. So I'm not mad. I'm not mad at people feeling how they feel. And I'm not mad for people wanting to support who they want to support. But just don't be dishonest. You know what I mean? Like, I can say if someone does well, even if I don't like them. Mike Pence, I felt, had Mayor Pete in his earpiece all night because he was calculated. He was cold. He was just bow, bow, bow over and over and over again. I said, yo, Pence is looking like a star. Pence is looking like he needs to distance himself from the president ASAP. He might actually have a bright political future if he's interested. But, yeah, he's attached to that other guy, so that's going to be a problem for him. But, yeah, if I see a CNN poll as the poll that you're quoting as to who won, I'm looking at you like, okay. But I tried to find any other poll, could not find anything else. A couple little there was an ABC poll. I think they said 78% of people didn't change their mind from the debates. 22% I thought said they had a more favorable view of Pence than coming into it, but they didn't really have a winner category. But I was impressed. I thought that he could do okay. I didn't think he would do as well as he did. But I am annoyed that the media is portraying this as though Harris was just crushing with all these amazing responses and just hitting them with fact after fact. Like, no, that's not what happened. I just don't like Pence. I feel you. It's okay to not like somebody and say that they did well or vice versa. I'm okay with that. Like, that's called intellectual honesty. We should all try it. It's good for us. I was giving Mayor Pete mad credit in those Democratic primaries. I never liked him. I gave him credit. I thought he did well, regardless. I'm not sure Pence speaks well, but he speaks slowly. If he wants to go anywhere politically, he has to speed it up. I mean, I don't know. I don't think speed of your rate of speech is going to be a factor that's going to determine your political success. When we look at who wins the debate, it's typically the person who speaks the longest. And, speaking slowly helps you to do that. Let's see if we can find Pence on the justice in the case of Breonna Taylor. This was his big flub of the night.
In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, none of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor,
Harris says that the family did not get justice. Playing it safe.
was justice done? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. And justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed. I mean, it really is astonishing. Flora Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City. Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to be her salon. It was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together. And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist, and that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities, is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone to know who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day that President Trump and I stand with you. And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats. Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources. Look, we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African American neighbors and all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership, we'll always stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what we've done from day one, and that is improve the lives of African Americans.
Thank you, Vice President.
Record unemployment, record investments in education, and we'll fight for school choice for all of our members.
Thank you,
What was the question? So, yeah, the question was basically, did the family of Breonna Taylor get justice in that case? And someone here made a good point. As a former AG in the state of California, for her to question the grand jury process, it's like, what are you doing? I'm not saying that I think that that was justice or not. I'm just curious as to how sincere you are with the statements that you make. Because when you say things like that, I feel like we could find a bunch of cases where people were not happy with the outcome of a situation, and then you probably came in and said as the AG, well, that's just the process. That's what they all do. So I don't want you to be this person who is the dissenting voice of what happened with the in this particular case when you're a prosecutor, when you have opportunity to change the entire system, but you don't do that, and then you're saying that justice wasn't served. If that's what the again, not that I agree, but if I was in this position, if I'm someone who's my entire career has been supporting these laws and upholding, you know, our system as it is currently, I don't get the right to now come up here and say, oh, justice wasn't served. No, that was the decision that the people who were put in that position made. And according to our system that you stand by, that you swore into, that you have upheld, that is always justice. So if it's not, why don't you change the system? Which is why when he brings up, why didn't you support Tim Scott's bill? I looked at Tim Scott's bill. We looked at her record previously. And, you know, basically, Tim Scott's bill was progress. No, it wasn't perfect. It didn't get rid of qualified immunity. There were some other provisions in there that the Democrats were pushing for. But really, it was just a political game in that they didn't want to give the Republicans a victory in this election year. This is the same thing when you look at the stimulus talks. Trump has been saying for the longest, if they just ask me for stimulus checks, I will approve that. But when you come back and you want to throw all this extra money here and there and this place and that place, I'm not going to do that. Now you have to fight it out with the Senate Republicans. They're purposely not getting things done because it doesn't help them politically. And I'm seeing it over and over and over again. And I think this is incredibly insincere. And I'm glad she was called out on it. But again, you could see the moderator is saying, thank you, Mr. Vice President. Harris isn't really saying anything. She doesn't want to talk because she knows what she's saying is BS. And it's completely disingenuous for her to sit there and say she doesn't stand by a grand jury decision when she is someone who has upheld that process for her career. Like, this chick she's got to be joking. To be fair, both Pence and Harris think people are stupid. They all think that. Agreed. To be extra fair, some people are. Was it justice when she was getting a check from the system? Now it's bloody murder. Exactly. You upheld this system. Now you're going to sit here and criticize it. Oh, okay, so where's your bill? Oh, you don't want to change it. You don't want to take the change that the Republicans are willing to actually give you immediately. You want to just push for something that you also know you can't get done. So is it justice you're looking for? Or is it just political victories? Because as long as you're about the political victories, then I guess we're stuck. Because if you can't win, nobody can win. Most people are, and they prey on it. Yeah. when I see her, I think, who's running for the Green Party? Yeah, man. Yeah. So that was, like I said, that was Pence's, I think, biggest fail of the night. That was, of course, the moment when the fly landed on his head, and the media ran with that. For the most part, his responses, like I said, he stretched some truths. He misrepresented some things. They both did, but I still think he did better than she did. But that was a pretty cringy response on his part. Pence was BS. That's why the fly landed on him. It came right when he was talking about there is no racism. Yeah, the implicit bias thing, she brought that up. She did respond. There is implicit bias in policing, and that's fair. You know what I mean? Pence was off the rails. He started talking about systematic racism or something like that. And, I just feel like those statements are always going to be seen as divisive. And I think Harris going along the lines of implicit bias, I think that's legit. I think that's the way to go. I think you can get buy-in from that. But I don't know if the case of Breonna Taylor was even that. You know what I mean? Like, again, to be honest, they were serving a warrant. Bullets came through. They fired back. They probably, I don't know if they even saw who they were firing at. That's what happens. You know what I mean? If you fire at an officer, no matter what you look like, they're going to fire back. So technically, that's not even a fair assessment of the situation. But, just crazy. Pence just, he was doing good. Then he took his cue from the president and then just lost it. Part of Trump's attraction is that he doesn't use big fancy words because he doesn't know the general public can understand when he says better, even if it's BS. For sure. Like Yang said, we are mostly high school educated population working ourselves to the bone. Absolutely. She's a jailer, and the Dems seem to love these jailers. Well, they love the jailers because they can fight the law and order message that Republicans typically will push. So they're going to want people who are tough on crime. That's why Joe Biden in the 80s was so tough on crime, because Democrats were always seen as weak when it came to matters of crime. And these are now things that come back to bite them, because now they have to say, oh, I was just doing it then. I was just political posturing. And to shame independent voters. Yeah, you can't shame independent voters. That doesn't work. Between her, Biden, and Trump, and this guy, good Lord. So it's a win for Pence, man. Say he forced Kamala to shame Bernie supporters. Harris said her criminal justice record should be the model of America criminal justice system. I thought we were trying to get away from disproportionately locking up black and brown people. Oh, man. 28 people watching. Hit the thumbs up. Yeah, man, get on that thumbs up. I appreciate you guys for coming through. I have been extremely stressed out lately. I told you guys I'm like super duper busy with my client stuff, but I'm making headway. Today is a big day. I'm going to try to get like 4 projects done, or at least drafts to clients, and that will give me space and bandwidth to get back to trying to make 3 videos a day. I'm looking at my calendar right now. I actually don't have anything next week. So next week, expect me to be dropping content regularly, multiple videos. I got to compete with this Tim Pool guy, man. The dude's dropping 4 to 10 videos a day. He's making it hard. I'm looking for a new job. Seems not easy. Yeah, man. Believe it or not, the things that they want for jobs these days, it's kind of incredible. It's like, yo, who is even qualified for these jobs that you guys are offering? But you know what? You're probably just not lying enough. As we've seen over and over again, these guys on top, they push their lies, okay? If Lori Loughlin's not talking about her daughter coming in second place at this specific race, or Joe Biden's not talking about how he graduated at the top of his class, or, he's got 3 degrees, and, if you're not lying like that, yeah, it's going to be tough. So listen, take your cue from the people who've already made it. Go further. And if you can't, lie better. That's the best advice I can give to anyone who's looking for a job. Not because I think it's the right thing to do, but apparently because it works. No one on YouTube is making egg videos or videos about eggs. It's the perfect niche. Whereas Dave Chappelle, he could probably kick Kamala. Yo, you know what? Can I say this real quick? Dave Chappelle once made that joke that, or is it either Dave Chappelle or Chris Rock? They made the joke about John McCain being the war hero who got caught. And, or maybe it was It was somebody. It was some comedian. And that's what Trump has been reciting. And I'm waiting for him to remember where he heard that. And then he can just put it off on that person. Because I'm like, you really going to let this comedian get off the hook off of this thing? Because he's not the first person to ever say that. He just happens to be the most high profile right now. But there's some comedian who I can't remember right now who's getting away with this joke and not even being given credit for it. That was Kat or Chris. Yeah, it was one. I cannot remember who said it, but that was definitely a joke in someone's stand-up special. Watching last night, Andrew Yang's comments full of nonsense. I guess that's all he can do for now. Yeah, again, I was super mad at Andrew Yang last night. I was tweeting it, and then I started checking other people's things. I'm looking at AOC, and she's like, Pence isn't answering the questions. I'm like, yeah, neither is the chick he's sitting next to. Like, what are you talking about? That's what y'all do. Y'all get up there, you answer the questions that make you look good, you dance around the ones that don't. Like, I thought that's what a debate is. Why do we act like debates are something different every time it's not happening in our favor? I just thought that was a really ridiculous statement for her to even make. But then Andrew J., you know, he's taking sides. I get it. You know, he's down with the blue, and that's fine. But if you can't be intellectually honest, you can just say nothing. That's always a good way to go. Like if I want to defend something and I realize that I would have to be intellectually dishonest in order to make the statement I'm about to make, I just say nothing. Because that's not fair. It's like, I'm really going to sit here and pretend that I don't know that Harris is getting destroyed. Nah, man, come on. She was trash. Get real. Yang was really cheerleading. He feels his only way in. No, he just needs to have something to offer. Like, he needs to firm up his base. He needs to know that he can get 10% of the vote next time, and maybe they'll give him, like, respect and attention. The fact that he's not even getting on CNN as much as you expected to, you know, that this says a lot. The fact that he's being seen as, when they bring him in as a small business counsel or whatever the hell, it's like, yo, they're not giving you no agency. They don't care what you think. They're not adopting UBI or the American scorecard or anything, any of the real policies that you talked about. In fact, why are they putting you on the small business council and not on anything related to technology where you would actually flourish? They clearly see you as something that they can use to get a couple of votes. And again, I'm not knocking him for this. He can do whatever he wants. I'm sure he's very stressed out. He's been running for office for several years. I think he ran for 2.5, 3 years. So if he wants to lay low and collect a check, yo, more power to him. He 100% has earned that. But kissing the ass of the Democrats, I see too many people doing that already. It's the same thing when I just said I would ignore black people if I was a Democrat. If I was Democrat established, I would totally ignore black people. I would ignore the fringe left. I would ignore these people, not because I don't value them, but because I know they're already in my pocket. So I'm not going to risk alienating another group who's kind of teetering back and forth to preserve the people who I know aren't going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. So you're good with them. Yang did compliment Pence as well. Did he? I missed that. Because that's where his particular crap when he's serving as the butt of Voltron has the most effect. Oh, man. That was pretty funny. They're pretty good at not answering questions. They're called politicians. Yeah, man, that's the job. That's what I expect politicians to do. When they start answering questions, then you should be afraid. Like, whoa, what's going on here? Since when y'all do that? So, oh man, I've been on for 44 minutes. My apologies. I was not trying to keep this video on this long. I'm going to get out of here. Like I said, I'm going to try to come back because I know I got to do my cutie segment because There's news in that case. Yeah, I got to get to work. I'll be back. Appreciate you guys for coming through. Make sure you hit that like button. More content coming. I hope you guys, if you didn't get a chance to watch the debate, I mean, you could check out the highlights. There's no real reason to watch the whole thing. There's a lot of misrepresentation going on. So definitely want to take a look at the fact check if you're going to watch the debate. But I'd love to hear what you guys think after you do watch it. Appreciate you guys for coming through. Have a great day. I will see you guys soon.